think these are the newbies here. They're swarming. Yeah, they got temporary plates, dude. These are brand spanking new. It's swarm. Oh, there's some more coming over there too.
Decent turbo. What's cracking lacking? Hey, mate. Hey,
Yeah, it's our private thing.
Yeah, they're down to the store. How many are from Milwaukee? How do I break it down?
District 11.
Where's the nearest store to Wheeling?
Nearest one to Wheeling is
Deerfield.
Is there a Wheeling store?
Vernon Hills even?
Arlington Heights.
Vernon Hills on
That's
Ninth
cool.
Street there.
That's cool. Well, welcome everybody. Do everybody want to come down?
There's another. There's another spot over here.
We need 2 spots. Yeah, we got spots all over. So actually, that's my stuff.
Let's crunch down.
Go ahead, everybody. Have a seat. Grab a seat if you can.
You have it. I have everybody here tonight. They're getting more. They're getting another. Oh, is that they? And then they were crazy.
Man, put that thing away.
I didn't get a chance to go to very many launches because of my schedule, but today was special. Being in Chicago is my hometown. It's been 14 years since I moved away on that cold January day. So this town is special and it's important, and not only just because it's my hometown, because I think there is something special about Chicago. I was telling the guys on the way here, my father growing up, he said, if you want to get something done fast, you go to New York. If you want to get something done weird, you go to LA. If you want to get something done right, you go to Chicago. And I think that's true. And I think this city, will always embrace something unique, from its sports teams to the culture. And I think Geek Squad is something that, while we tried to do it on our own 2.5 years ago, great things take time. And I think today with the invasion of Bay Drive, I've had this image in my head for 10 years, waiting for this day today. So I'm actually I'm a little speechless, and I imagine everybody's kind of hungry. So I think what we'll do is just hang out and have lunch, and then I'll say a few words when we're done. And are we swarming midway? On the way back?
We can, but with code yellow, we might just want to do like a 5 to 7.
That's fine. We'll play it up by ear too. I don't want to keep anybody too long. I have a long drive back on 94 to Milwaukee, whatever. So we'll play it by ear. So what I'm going to do is we'll just hang out. I'll talk with you during lunch, and then I'll say some words after lunch, and do some Q&A or whatever, and make this up as we go along. I'm used to being in charge, but anytime something like this grows to this size, I rely on the SWAT team, special agents like Gavin and Eric, who I trust my life with. So now the kind of torch is being passed to you, and all I can say is, I don't know if you're like me, but all I ever wanted to do when I was a kid was have my own gang, and now we got one. So let's enjoy lunch, and then we'll talk more.
We've gone through a lot of crap this week, right? But here we are, and we're here with the boss, the man himself. So he's going to talk a little bit about just some random stories that we're going to tell him to talk about.
All the stories that we want to hear again.
Right. Because it's always funnier when we hear it from people who haven't heard it before. So, Robert, I want you to start off talking about our first uniform, and when we swarmed Cargill and they freaked out a little bit.
Well, I gotta tell you, I get asked to give talks. When I first started Geek Squad, and the company would be 10 years old on June 16th. That was the actual day I incorporated. When we acquired Best Buy, we had to work with their legal team and had to go through all the paperwork. I had to dig up all the original incorporation papers, and I found my receipt with the Minnesota Secretary of State, the first sketch of the logo, and all that kind of stuff. And I kept it and scanned it in. And one of these days, from all the photos that we're gathering on the launches and stuff like that, I hope to have it in a repository with all these stories. And the stories I'm going to tell you are just some of the first ones. But for you, the stories are going to start the minute you leave this parking ramp today, because driving a Geekmobile you are now celebrities. Now, I've met a lot of celebrities, and you'll fix computers for a lot of celebrities, especially in a town as media-rich Target is, Chicagoland area is, or Indiana or Wisconsin. One thing I've discovered about celebrities, though, is they're really in the rejection business. They get rejected more than they get accepted for a role when they audition for it. So there's really a lot of deep-seated insecurity. So we think we look up to rock stars. The number of rock stars that don't ever become rock stars. So in a way, I found that they always look up to us when we're backstage or whatever. Because the difference between you and Batman is you're for real. Now, as far as I can tell, there are two other things you have on them. Not only you're for real, but you charge for helping people. Maybe Batman's a communist, so Batman doesn't charge either. And stars are stars, but all they do is they play other people that aren't for real or aren't alive anymore. Or and there's something about being authentic, and that's something that you'll come to discover. There are no gimmicks at the Geek Squad. The Geekmobiles are not gimmicks. The uniforms are not gimmicks. Now, we went through a few iterations, and maybe what I think of the concept of DNA. What I asked Eric and the SWAT team and Andy and Gavin to somehow balance out embedding you with some of the ideas that started the Geek Squad, but from going forward, you're going to carry it further. I mean, if an organization or culture is going to be strong, it has to live beyond the founder. At some point, Dick Schultz, who started Best Buy, handed off the reins, and each store kind of has its own microcosm, and you're going to now be adding to that, something I think is really interesting. So I talk about the concept of corporate DNA, the idea that you're being given these pallets of the uniform and the car, but you still are yourselves. Your personality you make in every single house call. So it's kind of that balance between there's your identity as a double agent where you're all united in certain behavior, including the off-duty code of conduct. We'll probably end up developing our own version of Bushido, the samurai code of ethics. But then there's also kind of what you bring to it, and that's what's going to keep Geek Squad going and going. Anyway, regarding the story, when I first started, I was just riding my mountain bike around town in Minneapolis, and I wanted a car, and it's so funny because I told this story a ton of times before, but it has relevance here in Chicago because growing up as a teenager, I used to go to Cabaret Metro, and I grew up in Wheeling. I was born in Great Lakes Naval Air Station, but used to come downtown with the family and go to the 50s McDonald's over on Ohio Street. And I don't know if they still have it or not, but when's the last time they had the 57 Chevy Nomad?
They have an old Chevy in there.
Well, they used to park on the outside of the McDonald's right over here. They used to park a 57 Chevy Nomad. It was orange with yellow flames, and it had a little yellow M on it. And at the time, it was one of the only McDonald's in the country that delivered to all the high-rises around here during business lunch hour. So you could actually order up a Big Mac and they deliver it to you. And they deliver it in the 57 Chevy Nomad. And I always thought that was cool, that they could have chosen any car for the business, but they chose to spend the money. And there's this perception that, it must have cost a lot of money to maintain this old car. If anybody knows anything about old cars, you probably pick up a 57 Chevy Nomad for 9 or 10 grand cash. And those things appreciate in value. So when it came time to pick a car, I was looking for an old Morris Minor, actually, because there was an old beat-up one behind this electronics store. And the guy wouldn't sell it to me, he wanted like $4 grand. So I went to this classic car shop in Minneapolis on Lindale, thinking maybe he'd have one. He had T-Birds in there, and now T-Birds go for 25, 30 grand if they're in mint condition. 59 Caddies, and then he had a couple GTOs if you're in muscle cars. So one day I walk in there, and there's this one car that's, literally, I swear to God, it was glowing green. And I walk back and look at it, and it was this 1958 Simca. I never even heard of a Simca. It was a French import in the 50s. It was like poker green. How many of you have seen a picture of this, or have they shown that trailer? Is it on the website? What's that?
Check it up on.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what you've embedded, what you've made up. Well, that car still runs. I bought it for $2,200. And when I say there are no gimmicks at the Geek Squad, what I mean by that is that I acquired a unique car for $2,200. It's probably worth $6,000 now. It hasn't depreciated. But the idea was just to have something different. I mean, you make house calls, we don't need to carry a lot of equipment. You can fit in a small car. And once I started driving around, I just put the logo. I had magnets made because I didn't even know if the orange was going to look good on the green background. So I just had oval magnets made. Now I'll tell you something else. Where I learned about driving around with a car, though, is when I was in high school here in Chicago. Now, back in the 80s, I used to hang out at Cabaret Metro and Medusa's, when it used to be like this juice bar. If you were under 18, you could go there. It was famous because there was no sign. Just said Spanish classes Tuesday and Thursday evenings. A purple light in an alley. It was like an old speakeasy, like in Milwaukee's trying to emulate that, you know. But they wouldn't even admit to being open or anything like that. And so a lot of that stuff I saw in Chicago, well, one of the fixtures of punk rock music in the 80s was most punk rock bands, like the Jam or whatever, would do a Batman theme song. Now, WNUR, how many people, is it WNUR still a good college radio station here in town?
Yeah.
I used to listen to that, and that's just a messed up radio station, tuning in at night and hearing Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin, next minute John Davidson, Silent Night, Holy Night. I mean, just play this weird music. So, I don't know, one day we came up from school, I think we might have been high or something like that, watching Batman and Robin reruns with Adam West. Now, I was born in '69, so I missed the whole Batman and Robin thing, but that was the original Batman. So we're watching this one day, and I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I hadn't seen it since I was 7 or 8 years old. So I decided to, I used to go to a vintage clothing store and wear blue combat boots and got a black trench coat and cut out an oval on the back of my trench coat and painted a Batman logo on there and walk around. People start calling me Batman. Now, I wasn't into comic books. I'm not in any of the comic book stuff or whatever. But it was great at parties because girls would come up and go, "Ooh, are you Batman?" I'd be like, "I am if you want me to be." And I learned about the idea of appearing different from the crowd. You know, when you're in high school, you go to a party at some keg fest, and everyone looks the same, and then there's the jocks, that are calling all the shots. And but I learned how to attract people's attention just kind of through wit and humor. By not caring, suddenly people thought you were cool, and I remember that. So then I took it a little further. People started finding Batman Viewmasters, and they'd leave them on my desk or porch at night when I get home, and I started collecting all this Batman stuff. And I had an old this black Chevy Cavalier, and I had oval magnets put on the side of the car, Batman logos. I just started driving around with the Batmobile. Now, rumor had it was WGN radio in town. My brother would call and say, "Hey, they were talking about you today on the radio. Some crazy kid drove around with some Batmobile-looking car." And it was great because everyone knew me. And that's when I first learned how often we pass each other on the road all the time, but we don't know it because everyone's driving the same cars. And I'd pull up to a party, and I'd be the most popular person there. The only problem with that, though, was that it was Batman. It was something that somebody else had created. So not everybody got it. Most people didn't get it. But I never forgot those lessons about kind of appearing different. And sometimes if you go completely in left field, you stand completely out of the pack. And you get certain fringe benefits with it. And you're going to know what I'm talking about. I used to, because I learned, like when I'm at a traffic light, I knew people were always looking at the car. And you might have noticed, have you ever driven down Michigan Avenue? There's something cool about that. And that's what I corrected with the Geek Squad. Is that, because with Batman, people would be like, "Hey, Batman, you dork," And they were right, because it was like somebody else's identity. But with Geek Squad, it's our identity. It doesn't exist already. There is no comic book. In fact, I've been flown out to Disney a couple years ago talking about a Geek Squad movie. But I turned it down because all the ideas were stupid. They were like basically lame rehashes of Revenge of the Nerds. And Revenge of the Nerds has already been told. But this story is like a controlled daydream. And one thing I learned about going to Hollywood and doing service calls for stars is that they're all playing other people's parts. But ours is authentic. There will be copycats. There already are Geeks on Call. But they're a franchise operation. You can franchise donuts and burgers, but I do not think you can franchise great service. There are bits and pieces. Now I'll tell you another story, and I'm going to get to the uniform in a minute.
It's okay.
I went to the Art Institute of Chicago. Now the reason I went there is because I took every computer class I could in high school. Now when I was a freshman, I was in like a senior level class. Now most of my classmates were seniors, some of them which were on the football team. And I used to copy computer games for them. So when my other fellow freshmen were getting dunked in the toilet and getting wedgies in the locker room, I was kind of a made guy. You ever seen Goodfellas? Remember that? Beat the crap out of a teacher? That was me. It was great. That's when I realized knowledge is power. So I took every computer class I could in high school. By the time I was a senior, though, there weren't any other classes left. And so I had an extra elective I could take and followed this pretty girl down the hall, past the cafeteria, around the gymnasium in art class, and realized there were a lot more girls in art than there were in computers. I decided I wanted to become an artist. So that's kind of the left brain and the right brain that we kept fighting with each other. So I went to the Art Institute of Chicago because I heard the teachers there had pink mohawks, and anybody remember the band Ministry? Their videos were kind of cool back in the 80s. You know, Chicago was really like the center of the best music, you know, Thrill Kill Cult and the Young Gods and all that music that was coming out of wax tracks on Lincoln Avenue. I mean, that really inspired me. If you think about during the 80s, with Kinko's coming around, everybody was publishing zines, independent magazines by photocopying stuff, and that was like the early internet. I mean, think about it. Before the internet was around, I'd go to a record store and you'd pick up some weird punk rock magazine that people were producing, and the album cover art and band names were weird and unique, and to this day, some people still think Geek Squad is a rock band, because we never bothered to explain it to anyone. It's kind of a litmus test now. So anyway, I want to tell you that because I can't really tell some of those stories to people unless they're from Chicago and understand some of the references. So I went to the Art Institute of Chicago and decided I wanted to be a starving artist. So that's what brought me up to Minnesota. Anyway, so after starting the Geek Squad, once I had the car and driving around, I didn't put a phone number on the side because I didn't want to get too many customers. It was just me in the beginning. But people, well, it became kind of fun. It brought me back to the high school days of driving around in the Batmobile, only now it's driving around in the Geekmobile. And I had a little bit of fun because it was like, you know what, as long as I'm on my way to a house call, I'm legitimized. I mean, if I'm some loser, and there's a lot of them like in LA trying to get a movie deal, acting weird on the street, and you'll find out about this guy. The guy who says, make a movie about me, he drives all over town and puts a big rooster on top of his car. It's one thing to be goofy, but then you get known as the town nut. But if you drive around in a car that says Geek Squad on it, and you wear this uniform, now you walk around with one person down the street, they're going to think you're going to hand them a Bible or something, you know? But when 30 of us come down Michigan Avenue, it's a whole different effect.
Because they should be now.
Exactly. That's right. So the point is that, I don't know what the point is there, I made that mistake. So I used to have a little fun, you know, driving in between service calls, you know, and when you're in your early 20s, it's easy to be on call all the time because you're not usually going on dates or you don't have kids or a family life, so you can kind of stay out at all hours of the night, enjoy it while it lasts. And being on call 24 hours is easy. So even if I was going to get a gallon of milk, I don't know, I started playing the part of the superhero. Speeding around corners, you know, and noticing everyone was looking or whatever, and be like, oh, the Geek Squad's here, what's going to happen? And so I started realizing, all right, well, that's where the idea of the swarm came about. Because without putting a phone number in the beginning, you don't want to get too many phone calls. But after a while, people will come up to you going, what the hell is the Geek Squad? I see your cars everywhere. You only had one. So I started realizing all these things are like, they're going to see us over and over because they see the same red Datsuns and Toyotas and Chryslers, and they all look the same. And all business cars look the same. Every plumber, I swear to God, uses a red or a white van. And they put 8 million words on there. And I've seen a lot of companies that use Beatles as advertising. And you'll see more of them now because you're going to be more conscious of it. But those companies usually only can afford 1 or 2. Right? Volkswagen finally woke up when we ordered 700 of them. And that is, you know, it's like certain artists, whether it's rock music or actors, there's certain movies that are just so far out there, like being John Malkovich or something. There's something that's so unique that they get street credibility. That's what we have. There's going to be a lot of competitors, and some of them using Beatles, but they're really, Geek Squad was designed to be a little bit out there, so that way when we are copied, and we've had competitors, but the more visible we come now in this nationwide launch, will only increase the number of people that are going to try and copy us. But that's okay. Now, whoever said imitation is a sincere form of flattery, obviously was never imitated. I don't find it the least bit flattering. What I find flattering is inspiration is the sincerest form of flattery. I'd like people to see Geek Squad and think, oh, I'm going to try and come up with a creative idea for my company, whether it's service or not. But those Beatles, if you look at most of the Beatles for advertising, have words all over the place, and that's why we don't have the website. Now, some of your cars have the website on.
Not here.
It's already getting taken care of. I threw a shit fit when I saw that. That was a mistake, but all your new cars I see today, happily, don't have that on there. And part of it is, I don't know, but when I used to watch the Nike commercials, especially with Michael Jordan in his heyday, they didn't put a phone number on where you could buy the Nike shoes. And there's something that's kind of suggested, like, hey, we're so cool, we don't need to put the phone number on there, we kind of destroyed the art of some of those Air Jordan commercials. And that's the same thing that we're trying to go for. But no one's ever bothered to do this before in computer support. And that's what makes it funny. No one's ever bothered. There's a million hairdressers to the stars. There's a million personal fitness assistants to the stars. No one has ever bothered to ask the Rolling Stones to become their official computer support. Or U2. And that's why every single time we've gone after them and asked them, they've gone, yeah, sure. Because there's no competition. And that's part of our attraction. So every time that you see a competitor, you can usually see them stealing from us, but they're not going to get it. And so they're probably going to do a really bad knockoff. But we're never going to lower ourselves. That's why you'll never hear me in any media interview mention the competition. They're not even worthy of mentioning. We won't even acknowledge their existence. And when people say, who's your biggest competitor? I say, ourselves. It's our own performance that we compete against, and apathy. And so, because every day, there is going to be a standard set for people that expect of you. But the cool part is, this is a character you can step into every day, but it's for real, so it's not fake. And hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier. On top of that, the kind of problems you're going to see now are different than any problems you've seen before. They're going to be more varied. So getting down to even more reality, the skill set you're going to acquire is very portable and very valuable. And we know in the IT industry that's, ultimately, what we're hoping to do is create a career path here. So the very even more talented people consider starting at Best Buy, maybe if they're on the bottom of the food chain in the IT industry. And we all know that, Cisco certifications would be among the most coveted. Well, that can happen now. And how many of you have heard of Best Buy for Business at all? That effort? Okay, most of you. That's great. That's Best Buy getting into that Microsoft Small Business Server, And that's one of the other reasons that we came to Best Buy, the Minnesota company, was to join forces. I took the company as far as I could in 8 years. But I have visions for Geek Squad that are bigger than me. And I need you, and I need Gavin, and Eric, and Deputy Dog, and everybody.
You want me Ryan over here?
We need you too. Well, the thing that I worried about, like Mike's been here 2.5 years, and he's been like the only person. And what I really worried about was that disconnectedness. It's you can probably talk about being an individual agent in the city. It's tough to have a swarm with one guy. And I can't be here all the time, especially we're in LA and San Francisco. But now we can have a real swarm. This is the realization of what I've had in my head for years. But it took a while to get here, too. I mean, it took 10 years to get here. I wish it could have been faster. I wish it could have been quicker. But now that I look back on it, I think about all the companies that try to get overnight success. What usually happens to them? Are they still around? Look at, so what I always focus on was reputation. There's one thing you cannot purchase, it's reputation. It takes years to build and minutes to destroy it. And especially these days, in the headlines with Enron and Martha Stewart, great reputations are in extremely short supply. And that's, I think, what obviously motivates Best Buy to turn around their image. And I think that we can totally do it. Most people, Eric, didn't you used to work at a Best Buy before Geek Squad?
Yeah, like 97.
Right. I mean, most people, the thing I was most worried about were you guys in the stores thinking that Geek Squad was going to come in and start telling you what to do. our attitude is we're already in the same blood. And most of the people at Geek Squad used to work at a Best Buy, so we knew the talent was already in the store. And the uniform is kind of a litmus test, because it's not just about technical talent. We've always turned away a lot of technically talented people that were either jerks or not nice. You've been specifically chosen because you happen to have a personality. Your personal hygiene is probably a little bit better than the industry average. We also want you for your personality too, you know? And yours too.
I was going to want you for your looks.
Anyway, so once we had the first Geekmobile, then it became kind of fun. It's like once you accidentally, and most great ideas, people bump into them, you know. Once we had the odd car, we realized the value of appearing different. So I never wanted to get the Toyota or any of the normal cars. So our second and third Geekmobiles were ice cream trucks. I don't know if you've seen the SWAT trucks. There's one still on the website. A company couldn't pay their bill, and we took 2 ice cream trucks in payment. They were white and blue with the annoying musical box in them. And so we painted them black and welded the window, cut the windows off, and put steel panels on the side and painted them black. Ever since when I grew up, there was a 70s TV show called SWAT that the movie that came out a couple years ago was based on. But that was only up for a couple of years, but I never forgot it. That was my first image of the idea of a group of people that knew how to do stuff, were bonded together, and would make a house call, bust the door down if need be, make shit happen, make it work, and get the hell out of there, and nobody better mess with them along the way. And I tell you, the parallels are obvious. Now, Chicago is home to the Blues Brothers. And now, whenever anybody company, if you think about it, you've probably seen companies occasionally, they use the Blues Brothers shtick. So the first uniform I was going to do was based on SWAT, black jumpsuits and black combat boots. I had a custom fanny pack so you could whip out a floppy disk in a moment's notice. You know? And part of it was based on Ghostbusters, but I didn't want to do the Ghostbusters thing. That's already been done. Can't do it SWAT completely, so it was kind of an amalgamation of things. Now this is when Nextel first came out. I think in 95 and 96 is when we first started using Nextel phones, which we recently since dropped or whatever. They were cool because they had the walkie-talkie, beep, beep, you know, and I was really into like NASA references too, you know, Roger, Mission Control, Eagles has landed. So we used to talk like that between dispatch and when you get to a house call, we'd have your radio in like that. And the customers loved it in the home because they'd hear like this bass control and it projected confidence, like, where did you just call? Well, I just called back to Mission Control, just rogered in to report that I made it here. And put on a little bit of a show for them. So now one of our original agents, and one of the few people with the title of Mission Specialist, actually, is the first one, actually lives here in Chicago now. His name is Joe Kotke. Anybody ever heard of the famous guitarist Leo Kotke? Yeah. That's his son, who was one of our first 5 special agents. But he lives here now. He runs True North, advertising, one of the biggest ad agencies in the world. He runs our global network. Something else we've been proud of. I've always been sad anytime an agent's left the Geek Squad. But no agent in the Geek Squad has ever made a lateral career move. Because of the skills you acquire and the environment and culture, you will, if you do leave, you may resign and retire your clip-on tie. You may give up your jacket, but you'll always keep your badge, so one day we'll may have to reactivate you. And we kept in touch with Joe over the years. But Joe had been doing a 6-month project in Cargill. Cargill, for who you don't know, sells the sugar to Coca-Cola, sells the rubber to Firestone, and sells the coffee beans to Folgers. The world's biggest private corporation. Happens to be based in Minnesota. And Joe had been doing a programming project back when we used to do pretty much anything that anybody else in town was afraid to do. IBM hired us for a part of a contract they had at Cargill to do some Unix upgrades. So at that time, he'd been there 6 months, and it was a Friday, and we were going to go pick him up. And we decided to take him out and get him drunk, and after being on site for so long. So we fired up to the SWAT trucks, and everyone loaded in, and we're all at our Nextels now. Just like the swarm leader, I was the swarm leader that day with only 2 cars, and radio were going, okay, red team, go. And they're like, well, we're right behind you. Just stay with me. Now, So we pull into Cargill's very private headquarters, and I'm like, okay, we're going to pull around and open the door, and you guys are all going to jump out, and we're going to go swarm the reception. Well, Cargill, being the world's largest private corporation, has no sense of humor. Just scared the crap out of the receptionist. So that's when we had to rethink the uniform. And I was going to do suits. I was going to do black ties, white shirts. It looked like the Blues Brothers. There was dry cleaning costs. You know, making you wear 2 layers of clothing was risky enough. So then Apollo 13 came out. And when I saw that, it reminded me of the old science films I had seen with the short sleeves, and everyone was wearing dark ties and buzz haircuts. And I saw Mission Control as another analogy, and that's when I realized that to come up with something original. This is the problem I had at art school, is that everybody was creative. The problem in a creative business where everybody's creative, well, you might not agree in the movie industry, but people are trying to be creative, that there's all this competition, but in computer repair, nobody's creative. That's why our competitors, I almost feel sorry for them, for what we're about to unleash on the Chicago market. I feel sorry for them that they're going to read about you in the paper rather than themselves. They're going to go, how do they do it? And they're going to try, and they're going to fail miserably, and it's going to be obvious. And there are going to be a lot of people who think this is just a gimmick. But that's part of the long-term strategy, and that's what does take years, and that's why reputation is important. Because they're going to see the clip-on ties. They're going to see the geekmobiles. They're going to try and copy that. And that's what we want them to think. We're going to trick them into thinking that's all we're made of. But it's all about showing up on time is the best marketing. Answering the phone is the best marketing. And it's not perfect right now with the call center in Florida, but it is getting better. We just changed all the recordings. I don't know if you heard it. That's what I'm going to be focusing on, because I wish I could be with you every day in a house call, because that's what I miss doing. It is the Dilbert principle. People get promoted to the point where they're least effective. So what I'm going to try and use my power and time to do now is to look out for you, make sure that, Andy, how long have you been with the Geek Squad?
4 years.
Eric? Gavin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Gavin's 6th day.
The Best Buy came in. They could have said, "Okay, Robert, we'll take it from here." And instead, they said, "Hey, Geek Squad has a great culture. Who do you recommend that we send around the country to do training?" And I said, "Well, our top people already." And so Gavin was working at a store, and they tried to transfer him to another store, and it didn't work out. And I kind of told them, I said, "You've got this great talent here. We'll take him." And it's like the Dirty Dozen. That's I forgot what my point is there too. I kind of get lost. I tell you, I think I was going to say, I'm so used to talking. I've spoken in front of have they gotten the speech at Miami, or?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that speech was in front of 1,000 people. I feel more intimidated talking to a room full of agents because I get distracted, because this is literally like, I can't tell if I'm in a dream or not. So I get distracted. I apologize. So that's the origin of the cars. But like I said, there are no gimmicks here, because that's just all. It's like if you operate well as a business, you have a good reputation. That's good. You stay in business and you make some money. And if you're really creative, you get a lot of attention. But at some point, that will peter out. But if you do both, you don't get 1 + 1 = 2. You get 1 + 1 = 40, because that's when you begin to surpass kind of everyone else. So there's a message board on the internet. I don't know if any of you have seen it yet, but you will. Now, I put this message board up a couple of years ago when we started expanding to other cities, thinking, the thing I'm worried about is making sure that as a group you stay connected to each other, sharing the stories. Hey, I was at Elton John's the other house the other night and he hit on me, Jimmy kid called the first time he went to Larry King's house, and he's like, "Yeah, check it out." So, and Larry King's lawyer was at a Peninsula Hotel, the most exclusive hotel in Beverly Hills, and he calls us on a Sunday night, and his laptop crashed, and he was referred by the concierge to the hotel who heard about us, but we didn't even know who this concierge was. And he calls us to the hotel, and he's like, we had to do, his hard drive died, or his laptop died, so we had to take the hard drive out and put it in a new laptop. Best Buy was about to close in 20 minutes, so we ran over to a Best Buy and bought 2 laptops so we'd have a spare one for the plane. I went back to the hotel. We did such a good job. At 9 o'clock at night, he goes, "All right, you're awesome. This guy also happens to be the lawyer, not only for Larry King, but George Tenet, head of the CIA. So then next thing Jennikin's like, yeah, so then at 9:30, we're pulling up to Larry King's Beverly Hills mansion. Larry's not home, he's at some fundraiser. His lawyer has a key, walks right in the front door. We go upstairs, this massive staircase into Larry King's bedroom. And he goes, yeah, there's like a picture on his nightstand, with his son in a kung fu pose, wearing some black belt uniform, holding the Book of Mormon or whatever, And Larry comes home like an hour later. Hello! Mark! You can hear Mark. He sounds like Raymond Burr from Ironton. Mark! Draw me a bath. So Larry King comes up and proceeds to start, because they're working on the computer in the bedroom or his wife's dressing room, and he's working on the computer, and Larry King starts taking his clothes off, like he's getting home from work, in this walk-in closet going, hey, nice to meet you, and he's wearing a wife beater with boxers, like cherry heart boxers. And Jennikin, and this will happen to you. Now, that's why I close the doors, because we can all talk amongst each other, because some of these stories, no one else is going to believe them. But they're true, and that's the great part. The rest of the world would love to have stories like this and have them be real, not a part they played in a movie or whatever. People are going to ask you for your autograph. On our way driving by Soldier Field, we stopped at the light in front of Buckingham Fountain. And his father was crossing the crosswalk. And his son had a digital camera with him. And his father's looking up, Buckingham Fountain, there's Lakeshore Drive, Soldier Field, and the kid, all he could do was shoot photos of it. His son finally had to go, Son!
There was a kid in Minneapolis who wanted to be Geek Squad for Halloween, too, so we gave him a clip on time. I remember that was last year.
That's what the bulletin board is. And I hadn't looked at it in a while, because back when we were only 50 people, hardly anyone used it. We were so busy. There was hardly any ever postings. I didn't realize that there were postings, but it was about 0.1%. Well, now there are a couple hundred people in there, and it's still 0.1%, but now there's a ton of posts on there. Go on there, especially the one that the shit you got to hear. That
the crazy.
Yeah.
Great stories. Oh, well, I've been printing them out. I've given some to Brad already. There was a photo of there's one double agent, I don't even know where, in D.C. She had her Geekmobile parked in front of the pillars at Best Buy. I was told to by the store manager. Well, she's inside talking to somebody, and somebody came up to her and said, hey, there's a couple cops outside, I want to talk to you. And she's like, oh, that no parking sign, I bet I'm going to get a ticket. She walks outside, and the cops are like, hey, can we get a picture with you with the cops? And it's on there, and it's for real. And this is why I'm still with the Geek Squad.
Well, and then Minneapolis SWAT team stuff, I remember that. When on their day off, they have that break off day.
Oh, listen, and this is where it gets weird, all right? Every once in a while, there's serendipity with the Geek Squad, because for years, SWAT, the cool thing is, and you've heard about the law enforcement discount, I love cops. I love Chicago cops. I mean, when I was 18 once, I was pissing on the mailbox. Down under the L tracks when I was waiting to go to the party was so backed up, and I had to go downstairs. I decided to start taking a leak, and I was drunk. And Chicago cops are great because they're like really busy, so you have to like literally pull a gun on them. They go in and they off. And they waited till I finished taking a piss. That's what I love about Chicago. They're like, "Are you done?" John, you're going to go to 26 in California. Don't fucking do that again. I was like, okay, and I did it. That's what I love about Chicago. Anyway, so I like law enforcement because when I realized, and when I learned at the Art Institute, is that everyone's trying to be creative. And that's why I never want to go into those kind of glamorous businesses, because everybody's creative. And sooner or later, you're number one day, next day you're old news. But it's the unglamorous businesses of the world that I realized that we can make the most contribution. Computer support is only a few steps up the food chain from plumbing. But I tell you what, if I ever get out of Geek Squad, I'm forming the Crack Squad, okay? Because plumbing, you can do so much. If I were to call it a plumbing company, I'd call it the best dressed plumbers in the world. Now, saying you're the best dressed plumbers in town or whatever doesn't tell you anything about the quality, but think about it, it's a different way of suggesting the same thing. It's like a good plot in a movie. We like certain movies that don't force feed us or spoon feed us the plot. They allow us to figure it out. And that's what we want customers to do. And my friend, who I work with a lot of the creative over the years, calls it time release marketing. And that's what I think, have perfected. And that's what you're going to experience. There's no phone numbers on the t-shirts. Why? Because if somebody gave you a t-shirt, unless it's funny or cool, you're going to wear it? No, you're going to use it to wash your car. People will ask you for the shirts. Nobody asks for a corporate shirt from anybody except us. Are they selling them in the stores? They're not. Are they?
They're selling the ones branded with Geek Squad and Best Buy.
Yeah, but see, I always want to have a couple. So that's when I realized that we can't ever take somebody else's idea and do that, because then it will never be our own. So we're a little bit of Men in Black, because it's comedy with a straight face. We're not goofy. This is not Revenge of the Nerds, okay? It's a funny movie, but that's not us. That's why you don't have pocket protectors. That's cliche. I will never allow this to become a cliche or to become too silly, because there is comedy with a straight face. The name is funny. The uniforms are humorous. The cars are unique looking. But when you show up, you're all business. And that's the cool part, is you don't have to be goofy. I'm not going to make you wear any flair. Now, about this uniform, we struggled with a long time, because most of the competitors wear jeans and a t-shirt or whatever, and that's what we used to wear. Black t-shirts and jeans or whatever. It just doesn't look good enough. The uniform came from NASA when I realized that we're a little bit of Ghostbusters. We're unique, but we charge for what we do. We charge higher than the industry average. But I also don't want you being seen as the low-cost leader. We're not out to compete with Walmart. So, how are we doing on time?
You're doing fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
all right.
Just making
well, because one thing I have worried about most of all is the uniform. That maybe you might not wear if I ever catch any of you not wearing the tie anywhere on duty or whatever, I'm going to freak. Because there's a reason why it looks the way it is. It's meant to be a little bit difficult to wear. But it's like school uniforms. There's something that, number one, I never expected to hear this, but I've been hearing it more and more. Hey, at least I don't have to worry about what I have to choose to wear in the morning. I never realized that would be a benefit. It was really to fight against what was happening in the 90s, the dress-down corporate culture. Just fine and dandy, but when everyone's doing it, with Geekmobiles, I don't want to bring another minivan into the world, and I certainly don't want to bring another polo shirt into the world. That's why I got the blue polo shirt, Blockbuster got the yellow one, Target got the red one. I didn't want to do what everyone else is doing. Nobody is ever going to do this uniform. There's only one other group of individuals in the world that wear this uniform. And one of two things is going to happen to the Mormons. They're either going to change their uniform, or they're going to have to learn how to fix computers. By the way, I have nothing against Mormons or anything like that. I hope nobody's offended. It's a great respect that we, but it was really inspired from the NASA uniform. Because NASA, if you think about it, is the ultimate geek organization. They don't know how cool they are, but something tells me they know something about marketing. They did not have to call their headquarters Mission Control. That is kick-ass. That's why we call it Mission Control. And that's when I learned in art school. There are two things I learned that I remember. One is that the Chinese have no word for art. They don't think of art as something separate that you go and see and then go home and look at something else. Everything from doorknob carvings to clothing manufacturing to printing, even the calligraphy of the Chinese character in like Japanese kanji is considered an art form. And if you saw, that creeping tiger shouting wolf or whatever, we do our own version. See, we take every movie and make it a Geek Squad movie, Anyway, I digress. A great company, I think, has no separate marketing operation. That's why I say I won't make it be goofy. I don't want people to think that there's any marketing. You're authentic. And while there are nerds and there are geeks, and do you know the difference between a nerd and a geek?
A nerd doesn't know that he's a nerd.
Right.
We train him on that.
Good. That's 3 bonus points. Expense the alcohol tonight from me, okay? X. That's right, there's a difference. I mean, there are nerds out there. But the fact is, you are cool. You all have your own different, unique stories. A lot of people geeks might have degrees, but most of them are in biology, or, I'm in art history or whatever, but also like computers. You're not Star Trek dorks. You're nice and you're cool people, and that's why I wanted Geek Squad. It's a little of both. I mean, tell me you don't sometimes feel guilty like staying home on a Saturday night to read the manual and to get really excited, but you don't care because it's cool, But then you also get out in the sun every once in a while, and I think that's what's going to differentiate us in terms of the culture. Anyway, so it's always about being a little bit of the hybrids, and that's when I realized is that it seems like in the art world or in the rock music world, everything's been done. I mean, how could they possibly come up with any weirder music than what we heard in the 80s and 90s? So how are we going to come up with something new? How does a company appear different in the marketplace? Now when we've got reality television and Donald Trump is the superstar. It seems like everything has been done. But that's the key to creativity, is you take two or more things that have already been done, combine them from different areas, and you have created something new. That's what we've done. We are a little bit Ghostbusters, but we're not a copy of it. We picked the right elements out of that. We are partially Dragnet. Because, Men in Black, I saw that movie, and, not only did I think they copied our uniforms or whatever, but when Tommy Lee Jones had that straight face, and Will Smith is like, you mean to tell me you get all your intelligence from National Enquirer? He goes, yeah, best damn investigative reporting on the planet. And he says it with a straight face. That's exactly what we're all about. Because what you'll notice, and this is something I practiced and I learned when I was in high school driving around the Batmobile, and I learned again with the first Geekmobile. It's like seeing somebody who's really beautiful across the street. And if you ever notice there's a difference between if they know that they're good looking, there's something not as cool about that, so you think they're stuck up or whatever. Same thing, how you got to think about how you appear. But if you ever observe someone who's beautiful and they don't know, they look humble, they don't seem aware of their beauty, and you're just entranced, that's how people view you. That's why I never look at anybody at a traffic light. I don't ignore them. If they honk or wave, I'll be like, doing my job. Instead of going, isn't this a sweet ride? You don't want them to know that you're aware of it, because they think you're not aware. In fact, you'll hear people apologize to you. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you a geek. You'd be like, it's cool, the world's richest man is a geek. It's all been settled now. Okay, we all know who's pumping my gas. So that argument's over. And when Bill Gates became the world's richest man, the social structure of the world shifted and changed in your benefit. So you don't have to be goofy at the traffic lights. And if you've seen any of the old Batman episodes, when Adam West goes into the go-go, does the tattoo scene when he walks into the bar, and he orders a drink, and he orders a glass of milk, There's something cool now about being uncool. And it's that balance that I can't exactly explain, but it'd be your job to kind of explore that question about how that is cool for you. Because now you don't have to compete with anybody on looks or even brains. It's a little bit of both. And the competition's going to be scratching your head for years, And last thing about copying, when Letterman left NBC and went to CBS, there's all this brouhaha from the NBC legal department. They tried to say, well, we own the trademark for stupid human tricks, and we own this, and we own that. And Letterman was like, go ahead, take it all. You can copyright all those things, but you can't copyright my sense of humor. And that's why I say the competitors are going to try and take they're going to miss it, okay? It's going to be like a conversation with Morpheus, okay? Why don't you realize you can jump or whatever, Same thing with the competitors. They're going to be grabbing at the wrong areas and just let them do that or whatever. Anyway, let's see. Talking about the cars and uniforms, Gavin?
Well, yeah, we eventually we got to get you back to Midway and get you through security, et cetera.
Oh, yeah, what time is it?
It's a little bit after 3 right now. So.
Okay, well, I do have to wrap it up. Well, this is not the last conversation that we'll have. I feel really bad because it's tough to get to know everybody at this scale. Hopefully you'll get to know me through other ways. I'm going to try and find different ways of communicating with you. I'd love to send you a disc every once in a while that had music on it that I felt was cool to listen to in between service calls. And maybe you'll hear a few messages. I call it the concept of faking my own death. Eventually you're just going to know... What?
Like sell Netflix.
You're late, call that.
Yeah. I'm going to try and communicate with you, but I want you to look at that message board and look it on there, because I think you'll recognize that the more house calls you do, the more you'll recognize the humor in that, and that'll be kind of cool. What I really want to do is create kind of like a Peace Corps thing. This is something, the last thing I thought I'll leave you with, because in the early point, I always thought it was about getting attention for the customers. And there's a lot of authors and business people that make money going around the country speaking about the customer experience. And Best Buy's focus on customer centricity. And I happen to agree with the strategy for Best Buy. But the strategy with Geek Squad and service, for me, it all starts with the agent. For me, it's about the employee experience, the agent experience. Because I think that by focusing on the experience you have while working here, focusing on the job skills you're going to get from making sure the systems are there for you when you need them. You've got kick-ass people you can turn to when you need something, and turn to each other and leverage that network of knowledge. With that, you will deliver an amazing customer experience. So that's why I think the message board is key in capturing these stories. Because I want you to put those amazing stories on there, because we are going to capture them. It's going to take us a while, but we're working on some kind of cool web server where we can have every image that gets submitted gets cataloged, and you can almost like Google search it, so you can just see all the celebrities and gaze at the entire country. And we will go global. We've already registered our trademark in other countries years in advance. So the last thing I was going to say though about the employee experience was we talked a lot about the rituals that we're going to develop and the traditions that we set. Gamma Sigma Recon was not invented by me. I mean, I only started this. But Gavin and Eric and you are going to, and Ryan are going to...
I haven't seen him this time.
Well, you know, Eric and Andy worked with me at Washington Avenue, so they benefited from being able to eat lunch with me. I wish I could do that with you too, because the fact that you're already here means you're one of us. You know what I mean? It's not like you have to pass muster to a certain test. But I can't be everywhere, so I wanted to develop what kind of a rituals and traditions that we have that become part of our culture that, you know, becomes unique. I mean, there's people that join the Rotary Club. That's one thing I've learned, is that not everyone's motivated by money or power or fame, but there is one thing that unites all human beings, and that is no one wants to lead a boring life. And there's a sense of camaraderie, I think, that people want to share. I think it's why young people join gangs. Well, this is a gang, but this is a legitimized gang. And we've taken every cool thing about every evil and positive group in the world and put it together in one Justice League that's for real. There may be a cartoon one day, but I guarantee it'll never be as cool as the real thing, which is odd. Usually it's the movies or the other way around.
You know, Robert, you might not be everywhere, but you never know where you might be.
That's a good point.
There you go.
He shows up just out of the blue, and that's awesome.
Well, that's why I say you might eventually know me and hear me only on some monitor screen, where all you see is my lap and there's a white cat. This may be the last time you'll see my face. But you know what? It doesn't matter. All I try to do is get Geek Squad to the point where it would attract a certain type of person coming into the organization, and that it would be like a palette that you could contribute to and borrow from. It doesn't rely on one person. And if you look at Martha Stewart, there are dangers of having an entire company rely on one person. I think the strongest cultures are the ones that are distributed, and the best leaders are the ones that share control. So this is an unfinished story. And the last thing I was going to talk about is really the concept of Bushido. It was Gorman, Agent Gorman out of San Francisco, who's on tour with Fleetwood Mac right now, doing tech support for them. Pretty soon we're going to rename it Fleetwood XP. But anyway, I once had said, you know, my ultimate dream though is that we have enough agents where literally you can be in any town. If you need something, you can literally look something. You have vacation, you need to borrow a car or whatever, you can just pick up the phone and get a hold of somebody. And Gorman was like, "Oh, you're talking about Bushido." I'm like, "What the hell is that?" He's like, "That's the code of the samurai." He's like, "Give me an example." And he had just finished reading Shogun or whatever. And I was like, keep going. What are you talking about? He's like, well, for example, the samurai were like the warrior class, and the lords would use them to defend their land or whatever. But when they would travel between counties or areas, if they encountered any other samurai, the code was that you put that person up for the night. And I told that story to a couple agents. And then a couple agents came in town. They had some vacation time and said they chose to spend their vacation time in Minneapolis. And a couple of the other agents self-organized with them and communicated without me being involved, and each one had put the person up for 1 or 2 nights, and they all got together and went bowling or whatever. And so the concept of that, kind of like the Peace Corps. Imagine being able to go anywhere in the country and You know, and that's when I saw Fight Club. and that scene, and he's wearing a black tie and a white shirt, and Ed Norton is like going crazy because he can't figure out this thing's gotten out of control that he started, and he can't keep track of what's real anymore. And he's the guy that's pouring the water, and he looks up at him, and the guy's got a black eye with a band-aid, and he's like, that's what I wanted. That's why I'm freaking out right now, because that scene is this scene right now. And that's where it gets cool, especially in Chicago, especially when you're doing sports figures and TV anchors and stuff like that. That's when it gets really fun. And you're going to get the best concert tickets, and you're going to get the best seats at the nicest restaurants because we fix their computers. But don't ever abuse that privilege. Because Batman would order a glass of milk on a Saturday night at the bar. And my point is that take that trust the customers put with us, because if the word ever gets out that we kiss and tell about our celebrity clientele outside this room, the jig is up and our reputation will be shot. And it takes years to get a reputation back, if ever. So think about that carefully, because it's easy to get lost in all the glamour of being an agent at some point, but be careful with it too. You know, with power. Give me a quote. Give me a quote.
Just like Yoda, try not to do or do not. There is no try.
What movie was that from?
Empire Strikes Back.
Anyway, listen, how much time do we have before we have to take off?
Just a few minutes, I guess. So.
You know, I always like to not just have it be one way. Are there any questions I can ask you? This is your last chance probably to have a one-on-one with me for a while. I mean, Chicago's my hometown, but I've got young kids, so it's hard to travel a lot. I like to be at home as much as possible. So I'll be trying to work on other ways to reach out. But I want you to know I am available. I know SWAT's available for you when you need them. And I'm hoping actually it's more resources.
Limo, you wanted to do your interviews with the pull-up and...
Yeah, you know, there's certain things as you grow, you can't do everything the way you'd like. I mean, your training is...
No, did you ever get a chance to do one? I know that you wanted to. That was your...
Oh, job interviews?
The job interview with where you had to pull up and suck them
we
in the
did
car.
that. In fact, the swarming and some Gamma Sigma recon, I think, was inspired by some of the stuff that we did. We have two limos. We've got a 66 Lincoln, 4-door with suicide doors, and we keep that at the basement of Beverly Hills Hotel, and that's where I keep the Simca. I should have one of the agents go there and take a photo of that, and just so you can actually see it there. They say it's the most famous car in the hotel, because all the stars don't come in the front entrance. They go in this underground VIP side entrance, and there's a couple Bentleys and Rolls Royces and Ferraris in there, and it turns out they charge $600 a month to store a car. So I moved the Simca and the Lincoln out there when we went to LA, and we use it for like movie premieres. Sometimes we offer to drive stars for free. So Val Kilmer was in this movie called Wonderland or whatever, and he had the opening Advanced Chinese Theater, and we offered to let him use the car for the night and pull up in the red carpet with our car and our logo there. So we're going to try and kick that off. And we have a 22-foot Lehman Peterson. Lehman Peterson was a company that stretched all the old Lincoln Continentals in the 60s for the presidents and ambassadors and kings. And right here off of Damon is where the original shop was. And from 1961 through 1973, they made all the presidential limousines. And we've got one of only about 400 left in the world. My dream ultimately is to have a stretched Lincoln in every single city that we keep maybe at the Drake Hotel or whatever, and if there's a special event, a couple of you drive that and drive the celebrity to the event or whatever, and just for the PR value of it. It's not going to happen overnight. One thing I'd like to see is actually probably more realistic now is to stretch a Beetle. So I'm seriously trying to get Best Buy to cough up some dough to sponsor a Jesse James show and stretch a Beetle. And I know you've got your own ideas for a show or whatever. So we're going to be fleshing a lot of that stuff out. Some of it may be based on the stories that we see on the site. So, but yeah, we did use it for the interviews. But now we're getting more mileage out of using it to actually ferry stars, like to and from gigs, because stars are really cheap. So if you offer them something free, they'll usually take it. And if we can get InStyle magazine to shoot a photo of our logo and stars walking out, it'd be helpful. Any other questions I can answer for you before I have to take off? Yes, sir.
How do you protect this culture of yours? Because Best Buy has a unique culture, and a lot of us are from Best Buy, some of us aren't. And this is like one of the first, I've been with Best Buy for 10 years, and it's like I'll be one of the first meetings or experiences I've gone through where, it was completely a different culture, and it's been refreshing, it's been great. How do you protect that culture as we're rolling this out nationwide?
I can't. You do. You're the one that protects the culture. I just started this. I'm not going to finish it, and I'll help along. And I can only influence and inspire. It's like I can't direct the behavior of the puck on the ice. I can only try and keep it in play. You're on the ice, you know, to use analogy after analogy here. But one of the reasons I went to Best Buy, though, is that they manage their own brand. They don't use an outside advertising firm. And their commercials are really good. And I think the experience in store is really good. But, you know, Best Buy's like Microsoft. Microsoft's an easy target to beat up in the press. But when you're number one, as Best Buy and Microsoft are, you're an easy target. And that's usually a sign of your success. It doesn't mean, you know, Best Buy is that bad. They just haven't focused on service. If Best Buy had focused on service, they'd be number one. And now they are, and they will. And you're going to be a big part of that culture. But that culture, because I don't want to protect the culture, because the culture that's there is going to be different than what it is once you come into it. All I want to do is just help keep it going along. You're going to be taking some interesting different directions. That means we're going to stay one step ahead of the curve. So I'll use my position. I can tell you Brad Anderson, who's the current vice chairman and CEO, about once a month, once every other month, he pulls me in his office, and I always tell him, you know, Brad, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 20 minutes to destroy one. And he always looks me dead in the eye and he goes, Robert, promise me you'll call me in 10. And he means it. So the top 7 or 8 major leaders at Best Buy personally have come up to me on a repeated basis saying, we know this is the coolest thing we've seen and we don't want to mess it up. Let us know if we're messing it up. Let us know what we need to do. You're part of that, you know. But Best Buy has a good store culture, and even though it's different than Geek Squad, it might not be as cool, but it's one thing to have a culture at a certain size. But when you have 90,000 employees, it's a lot tougher. The fact that it's as good as it is at 90,000 employees is pretty amazing. The key is if we can combine what Best Buy is really good at and what Geek Squad's really good at, that's when the magic happens. And it's no different than putting together the wireless equipment with the offer of in-store. But the ability for you to service Dell and Gateway customers, and all the Gateway stores have closed. And you know, we'll also do Macs. How's our Mac coverage now in these markets?
So CC markets have Mac.
Yeah. Well, we have always been committed to Mac, partly just for the PR, just to say that no one else does. So we are committed to doing that. It might take a while. You know, we're going to try and find the Mac daddies that are out there. And
What was great about that Wall Street Journal report was that the computer that Ron put up on the counter, everybody saw it was a Dell. So we got some free press out of that. Now we're fixing.
We're getting letters every day of Dell customers saying, Dell couldn't help me over the phone. I brought it into you, you fixed it, I'm going to buy my next computer at Best Buy. Those letters make the executives listen, because there's something I hadn't figured out. Best Buy's and the competition is going to help protect this culture too. Because when I came into it, I thought I didn't want to go to anyone else. I never went to CompUSA or Circuit City. I said to Best Buy, I said, I'll be honest with you, I'm supposed to make you think to raise the price that I'm going to go to someone else if you and I don't work out a deal. I'm not going to do that. You and I are going to do a deal, or I'm not doing it with anybody. Because I don't trust anyone else. No one else is, I think, manages the brand the way that Best Buy does. But I hadn't calculated that Dell and eBay and Walmart all form these competitive threats. And that keeps Best Buy on its heels. That's why they're doing customer centricity. Because they know they're number one now, but there's only 2 ways change occurs. You either force it on yourself or it gets forced on you, and they're trying to get ahead of the curve. It's pretty amazing for a company their size. And think about Microsoft got their ass whooped by Netscape, but they eventually came around in the browser wars and won. And same thing happened with Google. I mean, the whole search engine, you ain't seen nothing yet in terms of search engine technology. You know, and Microsoft is going to be the main innovator. It's going to be like Toyota. You know, they're going to give the consumers what they want. And with Google going public, Microsoft's going to do that same thing with Best Buy, only Best Buy isn't waiting. Think about it. Look, they're leading. Comp sucks. I mean, I go in their stores and they're just messy. Best Buy is great at managing that. Their service is, they're giving half of their service away for free. So when people say, oh, your rates are a bit higher than everyone else, and they say, yeah, you get what you paid for. Be careful when something's free. It usually means it has no value. So they're being really good, too, about keeping the prices. They want to knock the prices down a bit. So Best Buy, at every opportunity, has been, these guys are going to help protect the culture, too. And they could have put somebody else in place. So we'll see. We'll make it up as we go along, you know. But so far, it's way better than I could have imagined at this point. Just so you know, I'm committed to this, too. I will be with Geek Squad as long as it's fun. I mean, I can see myself doing it 10 or 20 years. I don't care less about the corporate thing. I care about doing this because, you know, it's like building the internet. It's kind of like computers were a certain value in the 80s, and then with the internet, they took on even more value, but we're still only getting a certain amount of 20% broadband penetration. I mean, we're just getting started. And then wireless comes around. Now, wireless, I think, is going to dwarf everything. We have high-speed mobile and cell phones. We can do anything, anywhere, anytime. What service is going to be perfectly suited to support these people? An asymmetrical, distributed service that can go anywhere, anytime, wherever people are connected. That's us. And then, just when our competitors might have figured out that it's about computers and networking, well, then we're going to be doing home theaters. TiVo now, TiVo Series 2, have USB ports on them, so you can hook a wireless Ethernet adapter. Most people on the buried teams in the home theater stores don't know that you can hook Ethernet up to a TiVo, but you do. And so that's kind of like the open page I'll leave you with, is that computers are just the first part. Televisions are going to start having hard drives in them. TiVo is toast. I love TiVo, but they're going to be like Palm and Apple. They're going to end up with 5% market share, and everything's going to have the DVR built in. And anything that connects to a network or has a hard drive is our domain. Now, you can't take home theater techs and get them to do computer stuff. They don't get drivers and DLLs. But you get home theater gear. That's like child's play for you, right? RCA, ooh, real hard. Ooh, programming a remote control, real difficult. What would you do with those new remote controls? Back it up for the customer on their hard drive. How long would you pay $100 for that? Cuz, how long did it take you to program it? About 6 frickin' hours? Right, I'll back up all the settings for you, so if your remote breaks or the batteries die on you, just sync it back up with your computer in 30 seconds in Palm. So, once we launch nationwide, that's just the beginning. This is not the end of the story. That's when things get interesting. And that's where I hope they give you more opportunities. Right now it's a computer support task force. One day it's going to be a home theater task force. It's going to be a technology task force. We're going to branch in other areas. And I'd like to, you know, some of you may be more personally interested in home theaters and the idea of linking video. You know, we're going to have one server in the home. It's going to be a master tower in the basement or the attic. There's going to need to be some Ethernet 100 megabit or gigabit in the house for the video streaming. There's going to be some Wi-Fi. We're about to get all these new things. Research this thing called Zigbee, which is home automation. Imagine every outlet using, like, not Bluetooth, but similar, forming mesh networks between every light socket in the house. And thermostats linking. And who the hell is going to understand this? Jimmy the plumber? You're the only group that's going to be able to get the network design part of it. So stuff's going to start to get really interesting. This is just the ground floor. So,
as far as protecting the brand goes, Ryan and I were like the last generation of special agent hired by Geek Squad before we even rolled this whole thing out. So, I mean, I consider myself lucky to be one of the last ones hired by the original Washington Avenue store. And the special agent who trained me in looked at me and said, "We don't hire shitheads."
Actually, Robert said that to me, and I never
Right.
And I was worried. I was like, "Oh, I'm a shithead. I don't even know. I'm freaking out."
But the reason you guys here is because you know something about technology. Lee told me, he said, you obviously have to have a good technical background, but I can always teach you stuff. I can't teach you personality. So I can tell you right there, that's how we protect it, because you guys are generation 1.2 in Chicago right now, so you're already the veterans of Geek Squad in this market. So now it's up to you to kind of continue that. Same with Milwaukee. Does that kind of make sense, everybody? So this is up to you. This is up to all of us.
I throw a thought in there. The most important thing that Robert ever said to me is like the prime directive on Star Trek, to protect our reputation. To me, that is the most important. I've been doing this for 2.5 years. Every single thing that I've done with a customer, every single job I've done, my overwhelming concern is to protect our reputation. What does that mean? It means taking care of the customer, getting their work done. But even more importantly, we don't sell computer service. It's probably a misconception. If you still have that in your head, get it out. What we sell is the experience of doing business with us. And that equals trust. It equals trust, competence, and the feeling of security as soon as we step in the door. That's why we have a badge. That's why we dress in caps. When we walk in the door, people know that we're going to get it done. We're not going to sell them crap they don't need. We're not going to shove a bunch of garbage down their throats. We're going to do what they need. We're going to do it right. and they're going to be able to count on us. If we screw it up, we're going to make it better. We're going to stay in touch with them. If we're late, we're going to tell them. All these things. It's all a big package. Any one little chip that falls out of the armor affects the whole. And that goes for everybody. And all I would have to say is, from talking to some of the guys who've been in some of the stores, the grocery stores and elsewhere, if you're having problems or any sort of internal problems, the people who are the straight people, let's call them the straight folks, in the Best Buy store, maybe aren't getting it, talk to these guys. I read that bulletin board a lot, and I see a lot of people posting an honest message like, well, my manager said this, and he made me sell that, and I didn't want to sell to the customer, but I did. In my personal opinion, I'm not speaking for anybody but me, my personal opinion is protect the Geek Squad reputation.